I'm Mrs. Dyson, and I'm going to take you on a journey through the history of portraiture. A portrait is an artwork, photograph or sculpture of a person. From the beginning of time, humans have been trying to capture what it means to be alive. Today, with a phone in our hand, we hold our arm outstretched and we snap a selfie. But long before there were phones, our First Nations people also held their arms outstretched, but instead of facing their hands towards themselves, they faced their hand away and onto the walls of caves, spraying ochre and other minerals from their mouths to leave behind an imprint that said, "I was here." And not just I was here, but we were here. Right from the start, we've tried to show who we were and the things we did while we were here. We began by capturing the side view of ourselves. We call this side view a profile. The Egyptians loved the profile. They used it all the time. They also included symbols called hieroglyphics, which told the stories of life back then. I wonder if they were the first patterns to appear in backgrounds. Profiles continued to be the rage in Roman times, so much so that emperors wanted their profiles captured on coins. Once again, we tried to capture not just what we looked like, but also the things we loved to do as humans in that period of time. It was in the 1400s when individual portraiture took off. At this time, artists captured you from the shoulders up. And to show that you were as important as the emperors who appeared on the coins, of course, they captured you in profile. While women remained in profile throughout the 1400s, men began to shift. First the shoulders, then the eyes, until eventually we were eye to eye with the person sitting for the portrait. This was important because it changed how we interacted with the person in the portrait. We go from being an observer of the person to interacting with them as they look back at us. Previously, looking straight at the viewer was reserved for religious or highly important people like emperors, so it was very bold to have your portrait painted face on. Hands began to make an appearance as a way of sharing information about the person. What do you think we can infer about each of these people based on what their hands are doing? Next, we begin to zoom out, showing more of the body. Backgrounds are included to give the viewer more context about the person. You see, when you add a background, you also add a story about the sitter. Self-portraits made their first appearance. Men painted themselves as confident and powerful, staring straight at us with no apology nor explanation. Whereas women artists painted themselves with palette and brush in hand. The sitter becomes the stander, as wealth and power is shown through the clothes you wear, the props you hold, and the objects you surround yourself with. Clothing and fabric becomes very luxurious as the wealthy show just how rich and powerful they were. Can you imagine how surprising it was when artworks shifted from the rich to everyday people doing everyday things? Artists wanted to show a more rounded version of what it meant to be alive, and for most people, that was not a life of fine clothes and objects of fancy. Along came the camera, and this was a game changer for both sitter and artist. Not only was it far cheaper to have your picture taken, it was much quicker. Portrait artists had to think creatively to find a way to survive, and that's exactly what they did. They got creative. They used expressive lines and bright colours. They used dots and surreal settings and patterns, not just behind like the Egyptians had done, but on the portraits themselves. They included symbolism, and they experimented with shapes and angles. They covered the face in all manner of things, including spots and dots. as they drew inspiration from pop culture and artists who came before them. Photography became more creative too, though nothing could beat the imaginative power that painters could bring to their portraits. Objects were no longer just something that surrounded the sitter. Now they were the sitter. We realised that we didn't have to have an exact likeness of ourselves, but rather a representation of who we are and what we stand for. Through portraiture, we showed not only ourselves and the places we lived and visited, we showed the vulnerability of life and the things that matter most to us. I wonder what element of portraiture you'd like to explore as you continue your journey. Perhaps you'll include hands that reveal something about the sitter, or perhaps you'll use found objects to represent someone of importance to you. Ooh, the choice is all yours because you are the artist.